Morning, everybody. Big day here on Monday at Gojo and Golic. Selection Sunday is in the books. We'll set the table for March Madness, brackets galore, as we have the men's and women's field both set. Plus, late last night, money coming out in Cincinnati, 2 wide receivers, 2 big paydays, but still plenty of questions about what the Cincinnati Bengals are capable of in 2025, and an NBA roundup. One angry coach on Statement Sunday in the NBA. All that and more coming up Monday here on Gojo and Golic. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. Great show coming up for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Fun one coming up today. Rebecca Lobo, ESPN basketball analyst, going to join us to set the women's tournament field. She was all over the programming last night as Selection Sunday raged on the ladies' side. Plenty to get upset about, especially if you're us this morning and Notre Dame somehow ends up a 3 seed, despite the fact that they were the number 1 team in the country 3 weeks ago. I mean, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? So we will go ahead. What?
No, that, you know what? I think it's good. I think it'll tick off the ladies. Okay. I think it'll put them in the right headspace because they lost 3 of their, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. They lost 3 of their last 5. They needed a wake-up call. This may be that wake-up call.
Congratulations, committee. You woke a sleeping giant in South Bend. The rest of the field, prepare yourselves because we're coming. So if you can't tell, a little pissed off this morning on that front. We'll have Rebecca try and talk some sense into us and tell us why that makes sense, along with the rest of what we saw on the tournament field there. Plenty to get to the tournament field here. Late last night, we mentioned Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase both got paid. Everyone in Bengals land had talked about that being the case, but now it's reality, and we've got some eye-popping, record-setting numbers that are going to make it really interesting for how the Cincinnati Bengals build out the rest of their team. But, Dad, we had Selection Sunday last night in the men's field as well in college basketball. And for you, I know this is an important time of year because for anyone that's known you or followed you, the sheets of integrity in March Madness have been as much associated with the lure as pot roast, type 2 diabetes, and the Patrick Mahomes take. So how are you feeling this morning as you begin to furiously fill out brackets with no regard for human life?
Well, first, I have a lot of brackets that are printed up and ready to go.
You actually printed them out already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I printed them out right when the selection shows were over. I was ready. I have 3 or 4 sheets filled out. And I may be a little cranky early. Understand, I mistimed my coffee to start the show. It is literally 6 feet from me, still brewing. 6 feet from me, and I have to wait 15 more minutes. So it's going to be lukewarm by the time I get to it. So a little agitated that the Notre Dame women went to 3, though I think that's a positive for them, and a little agitated that I'm not getting my caffeine for another 15 minutes. So
to be clear, you're agitated with yourself, right? Because this has been a common theme on this show, that you have all of this time in the morning that we're here in the pre-show, sitting here taking notes, doing things. You have all this time when you could do it, and yet every day you decide to wait till mere minutes before the show to go and hit start in the coffee maker.
Well, I'm busy preparing. I'm preparing. In this case, sheets to fill out. and I know you can do them online now, and I normally do it online for the 5 or 8 contests that I go in, and I'll explain why multiple sheets of integrity are the way to go a little later without question. But yeah, I listen. Selection Sunday is this is Valhalla for basketball fans, right? And even not basketball fans. I mean, this is where the smartest basketball fan thinks they're going to win one of their bracket tournaments, and someone who doesn't even watch the game and just fills out an arbitrary sheet ends up winning it and winning all the cash. It just goes to show you think you know, and you just don't know.
Well, it's why March Madness has not only stood the test of time, but thrived in an era where every sport really has trouble maintaining eyeballs because it's a single elimination tournament where you're right. All the expertise in the world seems to fall by the wayside. And it's why it's interesting, Dad. I want to put this in front of you because, as we mentioned, you and the sheets of integrity, which for anyone unfamiliar is said tongue in cheek, because while some people might fill out one bracket and use that as their one to go through a tournament with, my dad fills them out left and right. My dad will fill out double-digit brackets every year, different ones. He'll hedge in all the tournaments he's in. He'll have multiple in an entry if you invite him in one bracket pool. Peter Burns, our buddy and host over at ESPN, offered this one up as an idea for March Madness. And we will get to the table for the 1 seeds that were in the tournament here. We'll tell you the last 4 in, who got screwed, the controversy around North Carolina, and a budding case, or I should say a case that continues to add evidence why Rick Pitino may be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, college basketball coach of all time, as he is setting the table for his 6th different tournament team in his coaching history. But Dad, Peter Burns, ESPN and SEC Network host, offered this take. He said, how many March Madness brackets should you fill out? He says the correct answer is 3. 1 is filled out less than 60 seconds after the bracket first comes out. So last night, you see it, you hit ball right away. Number 2 is the head one. It's one in which you spend time actually studying the matchups. You go through, you listen to all the experts, you read through all the websites, and you fill it out there. And then the 3rd bracket he calls the heart bracket. It's the one where you pick what you really want to see happen. And so, Dad, what do you think as far as that methodology from Peter? Because I don't know if you've ever actually had a concrete methodology for the way that you filled out these brackets.
No, I mean, listen, it's fine because there's multiple sheets. Those that have just the 1 sheet of integrity, I want to be in the same contest as you because I'll just take your money. As you have 1 sheet and it burns up on the 2nd day and then you're watching for nothing. I do it twofold. I do it so I have a sheet that normally is going to be in it all the way to a championship game, and I do it to win the cash. Like I said, I go in about 5 to 10 different tournaments, NCAA bracket tournaments, and I'll actually do more on the women's side as well. And I listen, I'll go like the women's side used to be just about chalk, but this could maybe not be a chalk here. The men's side, I mean, we have seen 16 seed get beat twice. I mean, so if you have your 1 sheet and your national championship team loses in the first game, what are you doing? You just burn your sheet and you're done. So I have at least one where one of the number 1s win, one of the number 2s win, a certain amount of the 12s win, some of the 5s win. When we had Joe Lenardi on, I'll have VCU and Drake going a little bit of a ways as well, listening to him. So I will do all different combinations. It's the one thing that is difficult is remembering the combinations of winners that I had. But I will throw out anywhere from 8 to 15 brackets, depending on how I feel about them. And then I'll go in different contests where the entry fee is $5, $10, maybe $20. Now, I'll spend more money than those that just have 1 sheet of integrity. 1 sheet, you're spending less than I am, and you have the chance of a greater return, right? If you win it, you've only spent your $10 and you've won hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands, depending on the bracket tournament that you're in. I will spend more entry money, no doubt about it. So I'll have laid out more cash, and if I don't win anything, I lose more cash. So that goes without saying. but I also have a better chance to win a first, second, or third and get some of my money back to try and have a profit. So that's the way I've been doing business. For the most part, it's worked. Sometimes I get snuffed out even with 8 to 15 brackets, but I will never change. I will never change. And I used to have one bracket for the show that I'm doing, have just one bracket. Now I'll do that. But as far as money brackets, I'll have a bunch because I'm all about winning the bracket contest.
My dad takes the approach that teams talk about now with the modern NFL draft, which is I would rather have more lottery tickets as I'm walking in to try and strike gold than fewer than one first-round pick. I would rather have more picks overall, more entries to the party to try and see if I can get right and hit the jackpot there. So that's going to be your strategy there. I understand it, but I like Peter's methodology, especially in terms of the bracket where you get what you want to have happen. Because I feel like so much of life for us, especially when it comes to sport, is using all this information to fight what we actually want to see. And it's kind of like betting the do not pass line at the craps table here. I don't want to bet against fun. I don't want to bet against what we've got going on here. I want to win this all together. And so I think that's going to be important. And with that, Dad, I think it's important to look at the teams that we're going to potentially be talking about in this right now. And the chances are, if you've got a team going all the way, it's probably from the SEC. So as we look ahead, last night, we got the field set up here. The number 1 seeds, Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida, coming fresh off an SEC championship tournament victory. The Florida Gators join Auburn on the 1 line for the SEC in a banner year for the conference overall. A record 14 teams from a single conference, that being the SEC, make the NCAA tournament field, led by those 2 teams. And Dad, Auburn's the number 1 overall seed, followed closely behind by Duke. We thought there might be some debate there just because Auburn limped down the home stretch a little bit here. Duke did quite literally, although they managed to win. They did their last couple of games without their star freshman Cooper Flagg, who rolled his ankle against Georgia Tech in the ACC tournament quarterfinal, and sounds like he's trending in a positive direction. But Dad, any surprise there? This seems like the 1 line shook out exactly how we thought, and these teams right now seem to be the ones on top of everyone's mind that have the best chance of taking this home. DraftKings Sportsbook has Duke as the odds-on favorite, tied with Auburn, both at plus 350, followed by Florida at plus 380, and then a big jump to Houston at plus 600.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got the number ones right. As you mentioned, 14 teams from the SEC, which is a record. The record before that was the Big East. I forgot what year they had 11 teams in. So congrats to the SEC. What a freaking year you had. Duke, listen, a lot. Now, it was a normal ankle roll for Cooper Flagg, so I would imagine he's going to be fine at some point in this tournament. It goes on for a couple of weeks. So I really don't worry about that. I like the region that they're in. I listen, this is one of those, because of the different teams that were number 1 during the year. Even though Auburn's the overall number 1, I mean, they could easily lose. I always like to decide which is the first number 1 seed that's going to lose. Because you're not getting all 4 number 1s in the Final Four. It's just not going to happen. So it's always interesting on which is of the first number 1s lose. But I think they got the number 1s right. For the start of the tournament, it's just someone is going to lose. Again, twice they've lost to a 16 seed. I don't see that happening this year. But you never know. That's why it's a single elimination tournament. That's why this first weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is the best. That's why you have the least productivity at work around the country on Thursday and Friday. And that's why you have the biggest increase in guys getting vasectomies so they can take off of work on Thursdays and Fridays. And that's not a joke. That's the truth. That's an actual stat. So it is. This is the most fun, and you wait for that. It's interesting. We want the Cinderella story to happen early, but it's like we don't want the Cinderella story to be late, because then it messes up your sheets. Unless you're a fan of a Cinderella team and you do what Peter Burns said and pick with your heart, which normally that sheet's going to get shredded when you pick with your heart. But there is going to be 1 or 2 Cinderella teams that make a run.
Yeah, but I think there's that point that's freeing in every bracket cycle where we all do the same. This is your bracket, and it's the flaming dumpster rolling down that flooded street meme that signals that you kind of get released from the prison that is having to root for your bracket to do well. And that usually is authored by some team like George Mason, VCU, all these different teams,
Right.
Florida Gulf Coast, that we've seen over the years make deep tournament runs. And so it's going to be interesting in that regard, Dad. I think. Looking at this one, Florida was the real sexy pick I saw. I think everyone on the ESPN set for their bracket reveal show picked Florida to be their national championship. That group coming off of the tournament run that they had, Walter Clayton Jr. representing the archetype of a real sturdy guard player attached to a great defense that can help make a deep tournament run. Duke's obviously got what most people look at as the most talented player in Cooper Flagg on a really young team that starts 3 freshmen, which sort of bucks the trend for this. Auburn's got Chani Broom, who is a part of this, Auburn team that again is another one, great player of the year, older team that Bruce Pearl's got in tow there. And then Houston, team worried about health in some regards there, but you look at what Kelvin Sampson's done since coming over there, and it's been nothing but Sweet 16s with an Elite 8 and a Final 4 mixed in there. They only lost 1 regular season game since November 30th. So there's lots from that top group to get excited about. But, Dad, then to your point, you look further on down here, and I know there's a Clemson team people are excited about. We can get into a lot of the SEC teams like Alabama and Tennessee potentially mixed in there. Oh, by the way, we'll talk about at some point, if not now, Rick Pitino and St. John's as the 2 seed in that West region. That could net us, Dad, as you've got Kansas and Arkansas. Bill Self against John Calipari in opening weekend. Kansas taking on Arkansas in the 7-10 matchup, who would then in the next round face the winner of St. John's and Omaha. So we have got the potential for Rick Pitino and John Calipari in round number 2, depending on how the cards shake out here. So there was the early bit of drama that people saw unfolding potentially on weekend 1.
Well, yeah, that's when we used to talk about college basketball was known for the coach more than the players. These are 2 of the coaches that we're always out there and we're always known. You get an early matchup there, which is pretty interesting. You got North Carolina sliding in to the tournament. You have Texas sliding into the tournament, both in play-in games. Again, we were told at ESPN to call it the first round. It's not the first round, it's play-in. But North Carolina and Texas both getting in. I looked at this and it was interesting. There are 3 teams that overlap men and women as far as the top 4 seeds. You have Maryland men and Maryland women are both 4 seeds. You have Kentucky men are 3, Maryland women and Kentucky women are 4, and you have Duke men are 1 and Duke women are 2. So which asks the question, when's the last time a college won both the men's and women's national championship? And not shocking, that answer is UConn. They did it twice. They did it in 2004, and they did it in 2014. And by the way, in 2014, not only did the men and the women basketball team win, but the women's field hockey won a national championship. They had 3 national champs that year out of UConn in 2014. But yeah, UConn, the only team to do it, 2004, 2014. It's obviously against all odds that you'll get, it would be Duke with a 1 and a 2 that would statistically have the best shot. But that'd be a tough draw.
Yeah, the UConn, as we've documented last year, especially after the men went back-to-back, the 21st century blue blood that needs to get added to that every time we talk about them because of the success there. On the women's side, we mentioned we'll talk with Rebecca Lobo, but I was looking it up last night. South Carolina is trying to be the first repeat back-to-back champion since UConn did it in the middle of a 4-peat, 2013 to 2016. The UConn women won 4 in a row in women's college basketball, which thus makes them the last to do it back-to-back. So Dawn Staley's crowd going to join a crowded field there. But, Dad, likely none there. But we will see on that front there. You mentioned North Carolina getting in over the likes of IU, which feels like it was somewhat robbed. North Carolina felt like it should have been destined. They were the last 4 in were North Carolina, San Diego State, Xavier in Texas. Last 4 out, West Virginia, IU, Ohio State, and Boise State there. So if you are in that group, especially the folks in Bloomington, I can understand you being upset based on the resumes. But this bracket field is set. We will get to more later on a primer of Cinderellas, a look at Rick Pitino's career, and more. But coming up next, we got money coming out at the wide receiver spot in Cincinnati. Let's get to it on Gojo and Golic. Money coming out in Cincinnati, but how much will it actually buy you based on how they have decided to spend it? Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with Gojo and Golic. Rebecca Lobo, again, going to join us in hour number 2 to talk about the women's bracket reveal last night in March Madness. As we've got both fields set, we've got plenty of decisions and brackets to fill out here. We will figure out what we're going to do as far as a show pool or anything like that. We want to be ready to go for opening weekend, which is the conversation we always have, Dad, one of the best weekends in sports. I cannot wait to spend Thursday and Friday bellied up against a bar, TVs all around me here. I heard Katie Nolan, our dear friend over at the Casuals podcast, talking with our buddy Charlotte Wilder the other day, doing a bracket of the things they love about March Madness. And one of the things they brought up, and one of the things that quite honestly, Dad, was great about this last weekend in conference championship time in college basketball was noon beers. This idea that at any given time, you've got daytime basketball on, you've got sports wall to wall here that start early and go late. And so you can just immediately pull the tab on the 5 o'clock somewhere mentality and shove a couple of noon beers in there and really improve morale.
Still college day darty, right? Daytime party. I mean, that's what it is. You're off of work. You're the camaraderie in the bar, whether, people you don't know cheering for the same team or the same team because maybe you went there or the team because it's going to move you on in your bracket challenge. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people obviously want their alma maters to do well, but it's all about your individual bracket. There are so many people who know nothing about the teams that are in it, but they're cheering wildly for a team that they know nothing about, right? To advance, to get them points in their bracket sheet. There is nothing like this. There is nothing like a bracket tournament in NCAA basketball.
And meeting Cinderellas is an important part of that. So we will help you get to know a couple of the Cinderellas and a couple of names that could become those star players that all of a sudden captivate the nation. Remember DJ Burns at NC State from last year, and some of the guys that just generally tend to become characters during this season, where you're right, we're all doing this together. Also, and thank you to the chat over on YouTube watching the show. Dad, happy St. Patrick's Day. Neither of us, I don't know, is your shirt green? I'm always bad with the color recognition. Neither of us remembered this. Both of us Notre Dame fans with ample amount of green in the closet. So both of us should be getting, what, you get pinched when you don't wear green? I think that's what you do. I don't know if you can get away with that now. In a world that seems like it's governed by HR, but neither of us did it. So shame on us, and happy St. Patrick's Day to the folks out there. I saw the river dye green and my friends in Chicago having a fun time, but I think because it's not on a weekend, Dad, it sometimes doesn't feel like that because we're so used to St. Patrick's Day also being one of the go out, imbibe, and have fun with your friends holidays.
Yeah, I am not wearing green, and HR would have nothing to do with what I would do to somebody who pinched me. I would smack them. It would have nothing to do with HR. But I haven't gone out on a St. Patrick's Day. My dad or mom, when I was still living at home before I got married, I was obviously 21 or I couldn't go do this. But my dad would take me and my two brothers, my brother Greg and my brother Bob, and drop us off in the flats in Cleveland. Just drop us off. So we didn't have a car and we weren't driving home. We were taking a cab home. And we just spent the day partying down in the flats, drinking with everybody else. That seems like a lifetime ago because I can't remember the last time, A, I went out on St. Patrick's Day, or B, wanted to go out on St. Patrick's Day. I don't miss it. I enjoyed it when I did it, but I'm good with it now.
Definitely a young person's game. There's no question about that. What you've brought up with both of these does underscore, though, and it's a take I believe wholeheartedly, which is that dartying is more important once you get older than it was in college. You enjoyed it in college, drinking when the sun's out in the middle of the day, but it becomes vital when you're older to start it early and then cut it off before it goes too late. So you can go home, start hydrating, get some food, and you get to bed at a normal hour and try and wake up and have your wits about you the next day. Upon that rock, I will build my church. And upon the rock of wide receiver and skill position, Dad, is apparently how the Cincinnati Bengals want to continue to build their church. Late last night, Jordan Schultz reported that the Bengals agreed to a deal with both of their wide receivers, which is apparently the way they've tried to build this all along. Really weird. We've never seen this, by the way. Tandem deals done for guys in the same room in the NFL as Jamar Chase agrees to the record setter. We all knew this. One of the best players in the NFL agrees to the record-setting 4-year, $161 million deal that includes $112 million guaranteed. The average per year for that, just over $40 million a year, passing Myles Garrett. And so he becomes the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history, at least by that metric, while Tee Higgins also agrees to a 4-year deal, but his of the $115 million variety that's guaranteed for the first few years. It can be worth over $30 million in incentives, which would put him up. He's at about $28.75 for the salary as listed, which would, Dad, ho-hum, make him the 9th highest paid wide receiver in football, factoring all of this in. So we've talked about this a bunch, Dad, but now seeing it laid out the way it is with these dollar amounts for the Cincinnati Bengals, knowing that this is a team that's going to lean heavily on them and Joe Burrow while it potentially trades away Trey Hendrickson and still hasn't really put together an offensive line that spent meaningfully on that position overall or protected Joe Burrow at a level that feels requisite. Last year was definitely an improvement in that, but then the defense was a sieve. How do you feel about the Bengals team building strategy as now we see it laid out after this deal?
Well, the Bengals bungled this. I mean, they could have paid Jamar Chase 2 years ago and got him for a hell of a lot less. But they waited till their backs were completely against the wall with he and Tee Higgins. Now they may lose Trey Hendrickson because of that, a guy who's had 35 sacks in the last 2 years. No, I don't like the way they built. They did nothing for their defense. They should have signed these two back as weapons, but the timing of it just cost them. Absolutely cost them. So they have a ton of money tied up in Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, a lot of money tied up in Tee Higgins, and nothing really around them. We keep waiting for this team to compete in the North, right? I mean, they were in the Super Bowl, for God's sake, a few years ago. And you just they're not building around it. They're really, really top heavy, making the offense very productive, though still with some holes in it. And the defense, as you said, is sieve. So no, they have not built this well. They have not built this with a whole lot of foresight. And that starts with Jamar Chase of getting this deal done after his third year in the offseason, after his third year. You could have got a deal done for a hell of a lot cheaper. Now he is and should be, and we've had in the last month, right, a trade-off of the highest paid non-quarterbacks. First it was CeeDee Lamb at $34 million, Nick Bosa at $34.2, and then Justin Jefferson at $35. And then in the last month, Max Crosby at $35.5, Myles Garrett at $40, and now Jamar at $40.3. And like you mentioned with Tee Higgins, the ninth highest, but the top. We're starting to keep stats for the top number 2 wide receiver. And Tee Higgins is the highest paid number 2 wide receiver. So you have the highest paid non-quarterback, obviously highest paid receiver, and the highest paid number 2 receiver to go along with a quarterback who's making a hell of a lot of money as well.
On a team that was a great offense last year and didn't make the playoffs because their defense was so poor. And now a lot expected of Al Golden coming in to replace Lou Anarumo's defensive coordinator. But again, Lou Anarumo wasn't some slouch. This is still a Jimmy's and Joe's problem for the Bengals on defense, and they've done very little to address that this offseason other than checks notes, potentially offer to trade their best defensive player before they even get going. And so you're right, Dad. The timing of this is definitely FUBAR. The Bengals should have gotten ahead of this a lot better than they did. And instead, remember, we had to weather a Tee Higgins trade request last year. He was potentially going to play on the franchise tag. This year, you had to Jamar Chase hold out. Like, this has been contentious every single way it's gone. And even what you just mentioned at the end there, Dad, I do think it's worth noting. The Bengals, by not just doing this earlier this offseason, and maybe, listen, it takes 2 to tango. Jamar Chase very easily could have been waiting and said, I'm going to wait them out while these other deals mount up. But we didn't know how the Myles Garrett situation was going to resolve itself. That looked like it was heading towards either a protracted absence of Myles Garrett from that building or full on him getting granted his trade request.
Right.
And so you mentioned it. We went from the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL being Max Crosby at $35.5 million a year, it being the normal incremental increase over what we had seen from Justin Jefferson, to a jump in $5 million a year now that the Bengals had to get on top of to fulfill their stated promise. They're the ones that said, we want to make you the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And again, Jamar Chase could have absolutely put his heels in and said, I'm going to wait for these dominoes to fall to make sure that I'm the last guy that gets paid in that group. And so thus I get to hold that title for a little longer than who's ever going to come next. But Dad, that lack of foresight in the end cost him $5 million a year just in the last month, let alone the last couple of years.
Yep. And congratulations, Cincinnati. You now own the highest combined average salary per year at your wide receiver position. Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins will cost $69 million a year. Next is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at $58 million, like almost $11 million less. And then A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith at $57 million. And if somehow, some way they were to sign Trey Hendrickson, Trey would be making at least $30 million a year, at least. That would be between the three, $99 million a year average annual year their pay. Then throw in Burrow over the top of that, and that's 4 guys eating up a good amount of camp. That's if they sign Trey Hendrickson. And again, they let him seek a trade. Is it to seek a trade to find value and then sign him, or are they really looking to trade him? If they do sign him, like I said, those 4 guys are going to eat up a lot of cap.
Yeah, and again, happy these guys got paid. They're great players, and you should want them on your team. We talk about this all the time. You draft guys the way you do to try and get them to be half the player that T and Jamar have been. And Chase is 25 years old, turns 25 in this month. Tee Higgins is 26 years old. They're young. You're getting them in the prime of their careers, all these great things. But as Brett Coleman pointed out on Twitter the other day, Cincinnati's third in quarterback spending, understandable, first in wide receiver spending by nearly $30 million average annual value, and 28th in offensive line spending. It's going back to the Jamar Chase Penei Sewell draft, the meme that lit everyone up online of how you build your football team. And ultimately, I disagree fundamentally with the way that Cincinnati's tried to go about this. Now, they've added some pieces that have made their offensive line better. Really, the issue right now is with defense. But overall, Dad, this is a move where I understand it, but kind of the Cowboys problem, because you went about it timeline-wise the way you did, I'm still not sure what this nets you, because I don't know how much better the offense can be than last year, Dad. That wasn't the issue.
Right.
The issue was on defense, and they've done nothing to solve for that thus far, and we head into a time of the year in the NFL draft where Cincinnati has done nothing to prove to me that they're capable of drafting enough at that position or on that side of the ball to offset what they've got to spend in cash.
And when we say great offense, we should say great passing offense. It's a great passing offense last year, and it'll be a great passing offense this year. But they've been feast or famine. They've gone now 2 straight years of not being in the playoffs at all. The 2 years previous to that, they made AFC championship games, and one of the years they went to the Super Bowl and played the Rams. So they went AFC championship twice, one time in the Super Bowl, to now 2 years in a row with no playoffs. And again, they re-signed basically the tandem that helped them have a top offense, but they still missed the playoffs. So again, the Bengals, I'll say it, the Bengals bungled this in how they're building their team. They have high cap numbers for receivers and quarterback, but unfortunately not a lot else to show for it.
I do appreciate that Cincinnati did go out and actually pony up the money for this. And I do appreciate that Joe Burrow somewhat bullied them publicly into this. This is a franchise that made great strides under Marvin Lewis, the combination of him and Andy Dalton and all of the things they did to change the perspective around there. But this is a franchise that always is worried about beating the allegations when it comes to cheap ownership and the way that they do business there. And we were wondering how much would Joe Burrow, who is a generational quarterback prospect, would be able to goad them into. And the answer is 2 receivers making about $30 million a year, that much, where he came out and publicly stated and went on Pardon My Take and talked about the cap and mentioned we want to re-sign these guys. And Cincinnati, to their credit as an organization, this has been the party line. We believe we can pay both these guys. We want to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And they went out and made those promises. Dad, maybe if they re-sign Trey Hendrickson, while it's a lot of money and very few players, and the Dallas Cowboys somewhere in the wind wag their fingers at all of that, like, see, you can't win like this. We'll see if they somehow manage to bring Trey Hendrickson back on a deal and at least have that to plant their flag on. Maybe that changes the tenor. We know Al Golden maybe is that good, but it still remains to be seen.
Yeah. They would basically be bringing back the star players they had last year when they didn't make the playoffs. So, I mean, what did it net you? What did it net you?
What did it net you is right. Coming up next, we'll get to more quarterback questions around the NFL here on Gojo and Golic. about 20 minutes or so from being joined by Rebecca Lobo, ESPN college basketball analyst. Take a look ahead at March Madness on the women's side, which over the last handful of years has been the far more exciting side. Household names left and right, and plenty more, I'm sure, going to be born this March. So excited to tap in with her and get smarter on that side of college basketball. Dad, we just mentioned the Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase deals that got done. By the way, we didn't talk about that enough. Tandem deals done. How often do we see that ever in the world of sports, certainly in the NFL, where they're like, hey, we're going to step brothers negotiate as a team on this one and try and tackle this together. I would hope Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase wore matching tuxedos for their press conference in Cincinnati whenever that comes.
Yeah, the reason you don't see it, or it shouldn't happen, especially with this highest price, because it's not smart. It's not smart to have your guy average 40 mil and another guy 28 mil a year and sign the contract together. I mean, you gotta spread that stuff out. And to your point, maybe Jamar Chase was going to wait it out, but nobody saw the Myles Garrett deal come and jumping from 35.5 of Max Crosby to 40 over or 40 mil for Myles Garrett. Maybe Jamar wanted to wait it out, maybe, but at one point he was looking to make more than Justin Jefferson. That was 3 players ago as far as highest non-paid quarterbacks.
It feels like even longer ago. And so, Dad, if you are a fan of competent financial planning, though, while the Cincinnati Bengals may not have scratched that is, might I offer you the Sam Darnold Seattle Seahawks contract that we've seen the terms come to light on in recent days here? Remember, that was a 3-year, $100.5 million deal with Seattle with $55 million guaranteed. And initially, the shock of trading Geno Smith, making all the moves that Seattle did this offseason was there. They seem to have hedged their bets in this contract pretty well, though, Dad. The first year of the deal is fully guaranteed, and that's $37.5 million, which we know pennies for a starting quarterback in the NFL, let alone one that threw 35 touchdown passes a year ago. And the next portion of his deal in 2026, $27.5 million, 17.5 of which is guaranteed for injury, becomes fully guaranteed the week after the Super Bowl. So if things don't go well, there is potential for them to get out of this. And if it does go well, then it's a 2-year, like $65 million deal. And so, Dad, Seattle certainly has hedged their best and made this palatable. It still comes down to the ultimate question of whether you believe Sam Darnold in those circumstances can be an improvement this year over Geno Smith.
Right, and I don't know the answer to that, and is it going to be you get what you pay for? Now, again, it's a lot of money, but it's not up near the top of quarterbacks of what they make. But if it hits, you think about if it hits of what they're paying him and what top quarterbacks get. Jackson Smith-Njigba is in his rookie deal. Cooper Kupp signs with Seattle for a 3-year, $45 million deal. That's $15 a year. So just think of those 2 wide receivers and this quarterback compared to Cincinnati's 2 quarterback and 2 wide receivers, right? And Cincinnati finished with a record, had 9 wins, and Seattle basically last year, now they had obviously different receivers, had 10 wins, but they're coming in with a lot less hitting their cap numbers with quarterback and 2 receivers than Cincinnati is, with the same issues Cincinnati has of building around your receivers and your quarterback.
Well, I mean, different issues, though, because Cincinnati's quarterback and receivers can rip. Seattle now is going to be a defensive-led football team that has to see, hey, what Clint Kubiak is able to do with an offense that, again, lost Geno Smith in a trade to the Raiders, lost DK Metcalf to a trade to the Pittsburgh Steelers, cut Tyler Lockett, who's been a franchise stalwart for a while, and replaced it with Sam Darnold that we talked about at quarterback, who looked really good for parts of last season, tailed off at the end. We have concerns about the situational fit here in Seattle, and at least Dad tried to add to the wide receiver room. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a wide receiver 1, full stop. I think he's ready to go and ready to take over that, albeit in a new offense this year. But then they went out, Dad, and right in the division, Cooper Kupp gets released by the Los Angeles Rams. We all wax poetic about his time there. And Seattle raises their hand, and we had talked about them in the bidding with Cooper Kupp winning out and signing the veteran wide receiver. They signed him to a 3-year, $45 million deal, sources told ESPN at the end of last week, Dad. So the 31-year-old Cooper Kupp grew up very close to Seattle in Washington, but now joins JSN in a wide receiver group that, Dad, listen, it's going to look really different. And this is one that you're clearly trying to moneyball the situation a little bit on offense right now in Seattle. while you're in transition as a team. And I think, Dad, what overall this strategy seems to be, because again, without seeing the specifics of the Cup deal, I'd imagine like the Darnold deal, it's probably pretty front loaded and gives them an opportunity to get out of this early on, because it seems like what Seattle's trying to do is say, okay, we brought in a new head coach. We had a decent amount of success year one. The defense is where he wants to, and we want to plant our flag. And so we're going to go about trying to build the team the way we like there. And then on offense, over on the other side, the offensive coordinator hire didn't work out, and our quarterback was getting old. So we want to reset the clock there, take a calculated risk with a young quarterback. And if that doesn't work, a younger veteran quarterback, I should say. Obviously, Sam Darnold's not a young quarterback in terms of service, but in terms of age, he's still a younger quarterback in the NFL. We take the calculated risk there, and if it doesn't work out, we can get out from under all this and might be bad enough to put ourselves in position for one of the quarterbacks that comes loose down the road, is how I kind of view the strategy now, Dad. They seem to be a team in transition that's hoping maybe with the right bet here, and if lightning strikes right, they can find success here at a time where they're planning on this to be maybe a spicy bridge of sorts.
Yeah. They added Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well, who was with Buffalo and New Orleans as a receiver, which obviously not a very productive receiver, but a third wide receiver. They pick up Josh Jones on the O-line. They pick up DeMarcus Lawrence, defensive end, though he has been in the league for 10, 11 years. He's certainly on the back end of his career. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. It's a team that definitely transitioned to new players in a division that I know San Francisco was still a slight favorite, but I still say a really up in the air, up for grabs division.
Yeah, I the Rams, to me, clearly should be out in front right now. San Francisco deserves the respect they're owed for being a team that's already navigated changes in their roster and being successful with so many pieces. Kyle Shanahan's a gifted play caller. But for the Cardinals and for the Seahawks, I think this is a really interesting year. And for the Cardinals, we know they're going to do it with a quarterback in Kyler Murray that they felt like they got some progress out of last year in a healthy season. The offense that they've built around over there works. For Seattle, this is a very interesting time where we saw them do this with Geno Smith. Now they're going to try and do it again with Sam Darnold, but they're doing it in a very calculated, very smart financial way for a quarterback with still a lot of upside, and that still being the sell after last year. Maybe should be worrisome, maybe shouldn't be. Who knows? Dad, how surprised were you the Falcons decided to keep Kirk Cousins around? They kept him on their roster past 4 p.m. on Saturday, which triggered a $10 million roster bonus that was due for him in 2026. So Kirk Cousins now, it seems like, even more in line to maybe be the Falcons' backup quarterback going into the season. Is that the right move for Atlanta?
Well, I mean, it's a veteran who obviously knows the system, and he's another year removed from the Achilles. Just like we think Aaron Rodgers could have a good year, another year removed from the Achilles. Maybe Kirk Cousins, maybe they feel, as you're older, you take longer to recover. He'll come back from the Achilles. He's a veteran who you can plug in if Michael Penix struggles or gets hurt, that you're right in with a veteran, even though he threw a bunch of interceptions in a short amount of time last year. I think they're just covering their bases, and it's not a big cap hit, right? It's not really damning, and Michael Penix is on a rookie deal, so their quarterback cap hit is not awful by any stretch, and they're just hedging their bet, saying, well, let's have a veteran backup for our young quarterback. And by the way,
I agree.
Kirk Cousins has a no trade clause. If he did get traded, he would have to agree to any trade. I mean, Kirk Cousins has worked the business side of the NFL better than just about anybody.
Yeah, as Bomani Jones puts it, Kirk Cousins has been a hero at the bank for a long, long time. And, we thought kind of ushered in a generation of quarterback like Dak Prescott that's now able to work that to being at one time the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, of staring right into the eyes of management and not blinking in some critical situations. But, Dad, all the reasons that you mentioned, absolutely right for Atlanta. They had already earmarked all this money for their quarterback room. They reorged it and changed. Quite honestly, change places in a way that, hey, if you're Falcons fans, not great because you spent $100 million on a quarterback that looked like he couldn't move anymore, but at the very least made your 8th overall draft pick that we all laid waste to when it happened in real time at least look a little bit better. Now, all of that is contingent on how well can Michael Penix Jr. play in year, we'll call it 1.5 for him as a starter, considering he wasn't the full season starter last year. But that year 2 jump for Michael Penix Jr., Dad, now puts a lot of pressure on this current Falcons core. For Raheem Morris, who's at his second bite at the apple as a head coach, for Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, but for really everyone in Atlanta who decided this was how we were going to attack the quarterback position. We all said, hey, maybe resource-wise at that level could have been better served helping build out that defense that still didn't look great last year. But now at the very least, you get to sort of, I'm sure in their mind, have the last laugh, Dad, because now Michael Penix Jr. appears more valuable than ever. But the second part of this is he was the 5th quarterback, I believe, taken in that draft. He was the 5th quarterback right before Bo Nix taken in this last draft. And so with that in mind, you got the 5th quarterback. He's got to hit like one of the top guys in order for this to actually age well for them. And so they're a team that, listen, the NFC South every year, it's sort of, we do this with bumpers on because it's not the best division in the world and we feel like everyone's got a shot going into the season. But for Atlanta, there is an interesting amount of pressure for everyone involved, given the weird gamble they took at quarterback that already at least had soured fruit on one vine with Kirk Cousins and the way that deal went in year 1.
You know, and all the while it's a quarterback league now, all the pressure isn't on Michael Penix. Bijan Robinson is a stud. I mean, ran for almost 1,500 yards last year. By the way, he had 61 receptions out of the backfield. He had 304 carries and 61 receptions, so 365 touches. 365 touches he had. So he's counted on a lot in that offense. Drake London had 100 receptions. Darnell Mooney had 64. Kyle Pitts, the tight end, has been a bit of a disappointment, don't you think? He hasn't really taken off and had that big year where you're saying, wow, okay, they have one of the top tight ends. I think that's been a little bit of a disappointment for him.
He's catnip every year in terms of what people have always thought fantasy-wise he could be with that skill set. I'd push back, though, Dad, on all the pressure not being on Michael Penix Jr., because Bijan Robinson's a known commodity. And the reason I think he puts pressure on not only them but this franchise is, listen, they've got 3 years of control really left on his deal, 2025 and 2026, and then the potential 5th-year option in 2027, which is why if you've got a freak show running back, you can draft him in the first round and feel good about it if they are skill sets like Bijan Robinson, who's a space alien. But he is the archetypal running back, Dad, that I think of is prime for that Saquon Barkley-like transition potentially. If a team goes and messes around, and if the Atlanta Falcons miss on Michael Penix Jr. in the next couple of years, and you go through a couple of seasons with him as a starter, and the team craters, and you're bad, and you're firing everybody, I don't know if paying Bijan Robinson is going to be something that this is in the best interest of that franchise at that point. And so he'd be one of those guys we look at and say, because talent-wise, you turn on the tape. I was going back to study a little Drew Dahlman when the free agency started, and your eyes just get drawn. I mean, the things that he does naturally as a mover are unlike very few other guys in the NFL. And so he'd be one of those guys. And so, Dad, there is an amount of pressure there to make sure you go out as this offense that's one of the best zone offenses in the NFL, that's got a really good offensive line and scheme around him, to go and try and continue to support him in that way. Because, man, hitting on that guy right now, we see what that position can do to elevate you from good to great. The Falcons have to get back to good consistently, and that all starts with the quarterback and Michael Penix Jr. now, and that defense under Raheem Morris that's got to make massive improvements now for the first time without Grady Jarrett, who's left the confines there.
Yeah, the defense has to come through. They can't rely on the passing. They have to be able to use the running back in Bijan Robinson, who will be in his 3rd year, so he can do a deal after in the next offseason. He's a first-round pick, so there'll be the 5th-year option. But he's the guy, right? He's the next guy to set the running back market if he keeps producing the way he's producing. We saw Saquon Barkley jump the salary to $20 million a year. Bijan Robinson's the next guy who's going to be the top guy, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of who else would come along. He's 23 years old. 23 years old. So he's got plenty of time.
Yeah, he should be the one. If you're a team in 3 years with a really good offensive line, he'd be the one that I'd say you pony up and try and give him whatever he wants if they're going to let him get out of that building in Atlanta for one reason or another. Coming up next, we'll head abroad for an interesting baseball game and come back home to Rebecca Lobo to look at the women's bracket here on Gojo and Golic. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Major League Baseball season quickly approaching, and what a cool open to the season as someone that just went to Japan this summer and got to take in the beauty of the Tokyo Dome, one of the coolest sporting events I've ever been to. Major League Baseball has an opening season series between the Cubs and the Dodgers, considering Shohei Ohtani and the notable amount of Japanese superstars on that team. And while he'll be playing there, Mookie Betts will not be playing in the two-game series. Lingering illness for the last week, citing dehydration. The club going to sit him down and be mindful of their situation so as not to open him up to, wait for it here, Dad, soft tissue injury. So Japan will just have to enjoy their favorite son, Shohei Ohtani. We'll enjoy Rebecca Lobo next on Gojo and Golic. Hour number 2 here on Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. with you guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day Monday. We've got a lot coming up this hour. Rebecca Lobo, the Hall of Famer, going to join us to talk about the women's bracket in March Madness. We want to look at the case of Rick Pitino in college basketball and what he's on the cusp of right now as a coach taking his 6th different program to the NCAA tournament field and one of the 2 seed in St. John's that has a very real chance to make a run after coming back and winning the Big East for the first time since the 90s. It's felt like a nostalgia trip there, and I want to talk about what that means for him overall. But, Dad, don't look now. No, it's not Aaron Rodgers' watch netting us anything yet. We're still waiting on the decision from him, from the Vikings, from whatever is going to happen with that quarterback in the NFL. But we got live golf on a Monday morning, getting ready to tee off here right now. The Players was happening over the weekend, and because of a rain-delayed final round, we now ended up with a tie atop the leaderboard. J.J. Spawn, who I believe is the 57th ranked player in the world, 1 career tour win going into this weekend, squaring off against Rory McIlroy in a playoff. They're going to play 3 holes this morning here, teeing off any minute now at TPC Sawgrass. But, Dad, a really compelling final round. Rory started 4 shots behind on the day, ends up taking the lead a little bit in the 9th, and Spawn, who had been at near the top of the leaderboard, manages to hold on in a final round with plenty of twists and turns. So very excited for a little morning golf action this morning. We rarely get something this nice handed to us.
Yeah, after such a long rain delay that they had coming back out on the course and having to finish up and then getting extra golf. And it's a aggregate 3 holes. I'll play 16, 17, and 18. And that's how it'll go. It'll count the 3 holes. So it's a shame you have to spend the day or the night there and come back to play just 3 holes. Normally like the U.S. Open, where you go back and you play a whole 18. If it's a tie, you go back Monday and you play an entire 18. Well, I hear it's aggregated 3 holes. So spend a whole day, a whole night there just to wake up and play 3 holes. But again, it's for over $4 million. The winner gets over $4 million. Second place gets 2.7. Both are healthy and nice amounts without question, but you'd like to be in that 4 range.
Yeah, I'd say especially if you're J.J. Spawn, who again has 1, that's no typo, 1 win on the tour aside from this, so would be a pretty substantial jump for him. And you could see it, Dad, as he went in. Rory went into the clubhouse at 12 under as the leader in the clubhouse, and Spawn had a birdie look at it on 18 to potentially win the tournament and left it about 4 inches short on that putt, and you saw the light leave his eyes, and it prompted an interesting discussion, Dad, because in watching that tournament, I was sitting there saying the whole day, man, I hope we don't see Rory choke this away, because we understand that he's had a problem finishing in some big tournaments over the last handful of years. And someone checked me on that on Blue Sky. I forget the user's name, so my apology, but push back the idea that you can choke when you started the day 4 shots behind and then eventually took the lead on the back 9 of the day and now got yourself into position. And so it brought it up, Dad. Is it considered a choke job in these circumstances? Golf is so strange because anytime in another sport where you had a higher seed against a lower seed, it's a one-on-one matchup. And whether it is a solo sport like tennis or a team sport like football, you go out here and you would have, just by the stakes or the stature of the teams involved, a choke inherent in that. Is this a choke job if Rory McIlroy loses today, even though he wasn't the leader the whole way?
I would say it would be more of a choke job today if he were to lose than yesterday, coming back from the amount of strokes down that he came back from to have the lead. Though I get what you're saying, because he's the more experienced player with obviously a ton more wins, that once he had the lead that you should hang on to. But the course was definitely playing tough yesterday after the rain. So I would look at it more today that he's the more experienced golfer. I know it's going in even 16, 17, and 18, but I would look at it more today than yesterday.
At Gojo and Golic, is it choking if Rory McIlroy loses the Players today? As we get the playoff there, but the playoffs just getting started in college basketball. And for more on that, we bring in a great experience for this time of year, the Hall of Famer, Rebecca Lobo, ESPN college basketball analyst, kind enough to join us here now. Good morning, Rebecca. I'm sure this has got to be like a holiday for you, even though it is technically a holiday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. You remembered to wear green, I see.
I'm wearing my green for St. Patrick's Day, and yes, we love this day. It's exciting. Let's get this tournament started already.
Yeah,
Oh, for
it is
sure.
a great time of year, and we need the tournament to get started. And Rebecca, we need help from you. So I will start at the treetops before we get to our personal complaint here. But looking in
Yes.
the women's bracket here, the number one seeds in the tournament: South Carolina, USC, Texas, and UCLA getting the number one overall seed. Was there any surprise in that one for the Bruins that have been great all year long, but I felt like maybe not respected in the same ways that South Carolina, USC, and some others had been along the way?
Yeah, I think there was surprise that South Carolina wasn't the number one overall seed just because their strength of schedule was ridiculous. And the committee kept pointing to a couple things with South Carolina. One, their 29-point loss to UConn at home a few weeks ago. And then the head-to-head matchup that was played back in November where UCLA was able to beat South Carolina in Westwood. But I think a lot of people thought, based on the strength of South Carolina's schedule, how well they were playing. They were absolutely dominant throughout the course of their SEC tournament. The expectation was that South Carolina would get that number one overall. That being said, if you're a South Carolina fan, you should be really happy and pleased with their bracket. To have Duke as your 2 seed, which was a surprise. I think people expected Duke to be a 3 seed, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, when we talk the Notre Dame women. But if you're looking at South Carolina's bracket, you're thinking they have a really friendly path to getting to the Final Four, especially considering they're in Birmingham, and how much, if they do make it to the Final Four, how much easier that travel is than anyone who has to come from Spokane.
Oh, yes, we will get to Notre Dame in a bit. So as far as the path for South Carolina, what do you say about the path for USC? I mean, they would have to get out of that region. They'd have to play UConn. Now they beat UConn in December, I think 72-70. It was a close game. Both Juju Watkins and Paige Beckers had good games. But UConn seems to really be hitting their stride now.
This was frankly the biggest surprise to me when I saw the bracket, and sort of the biggest disappointment. Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins are the two biggest stars in women's college basketball. We do have other big stars: Hannah Hidalgo, Mylasia Fulwiley, Madison Booker. However, the two biggest are Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins. And the notion that one of them for sure will not be in the Final Four is certainly disappointing. You also have to look, Mike, that this is the matchup that happened in last year's regional final out in Seattle. UConn beat USC last year to make it to the Final Four. I think the expectation was that USC would be the third number one, Texas the fourth number one, and then Texas would end up aligned with UConn. So it was a massive surprise when we got the bracket to see that this matchup between USC and UConn that everyone wants to see might just happen a little bit earlier. And yeah, I mean, it was a great game when they played in December. But UConn has been to 15 of the last 16 Final Fours. Last year, they made it as a 3 seed. A couple of years ago, they made it as a 2 seed. They are always going to be a tough out. And so if I'm a USC fan, I am not happy about that at all.
You mentioned UConn always a tough out. Seemed to get even tougher down the home stretch of the season, starting with that emphatic win against South Carolina. What's made UConn such a different threat now as we close in on this tournament in March?
I think that, the pieces are just coming together. And one of the big differences with UConn this year and previous years is they have a lot of healthy pieces. They've been decimated by injury the past couple of years. Maybe the week before they lost, the week before they beat South Carolina, they lost to Tennessee in a game that they could have won. And it felt like there were times this season against Notre Dame, against USC as well, where they were close but weren't quite there. And it's just a team that feels like it's really grown. Paige Beckers is taking a little bit more of the responsibility on her shoulders when the opponents go on runs. Azzi Fudd in that South Carolina game was absolutely stellar. So I think it's just taken a little bit of time, but certainly UConn is playing their best basketball of the season too. And just Gino Auriemma has proven year after year he knows how to prepare his teams for this time of year. And that's one of the things he told us before the Tennessee game. He said it again before they played South Carolina. He said, we are going to be a really tough out in March. And they're certainly on the right trajectory for that.
Well, going to the opposite of Mike and I's team, Notre Dame, of not playing their best ball right now. After Notre Dame, I think, had a 22-game winning streak, they lost 3 of their last 5. Everybody thought they'd fall to the 2 line. They fell to the 3 line, and they were one of the few schools not on the selection show camera. They weren't all together. I think they're all ticked off about the way they were playing as of late. But were you surprised they dropped to the 3 line?
I was surprised that they dropped to 3, and I understand. They haven't been playing their best basketball the last couple of weeks of the season. You point out they lost 3 of their last 5. The difference, however, between Notre Dame and the rest of the 3 seeds and Notre Dame and some of the 2 seeds is that Notre Dame in December and January was the best team in the country. Hannah Hidalgo in the stretch of December to January was the front runner for National Player of the Year. We haven't seen any other lower 2 seeds or 3 seeds at any point this season look like the best team in the country. And so does Notre Dame kind of have to get their mojo back? Do they have to figure out their efficiency again, especially in their backcourt with Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles? Yes. But also when Hidalgo, Miles, and Sonia Citron are playing at the top of their game, they're the best backcourt trio in the country. And so that's the thing with Notre Dame, that they are so dangerous when they're playing well. And while you don't expect them to be a 3 seed, when you look at their bracket, you're like, all right, so the 2 seed is TCU, a team that beat Notre Dame back in one of the island tournaments back in November, but in a game where Notre Dame had a lead. That's certainly a game Notre Dame can win. And then their 1 seed is Texas, a team that they've already beaten this year. So if you're Notre Dame, you're thinking, all right, if we get back to playing the way we did when we looked like the best team in the country, we certainly do have a path that we can see that puts us in Tampa for the Final Four.
So you mentioned Notre Dame as the 3 seed, absolutely a live dog to go and potentially win a national championship. We mentioned a lot of the contenders. How deep overall, Rebecca, do you think the field is of teams that can realistically cut down the nets when this all said and done?
Well, it's funny because I think there are 6 teams who can realistically win a national championship. And on the women's side, that's a lot. You know, usually we go into a tournament and there's an undefeated team. You're like, this team is the favorite. Can anyone beat South Carolina? Can anyone beat whoever it might be that year? So 6 teams is a lot. So you look at all of the number 1 seeds, they can all win a national championship. UConn as a 2 seed can win a national championship. And Notre Dame is the other one to me as a 3 seed that can win a national championship. Now, I think NC State, who is a 2 seed in UCLA's region, I think they could potentially get to a Final Four. Do I think they could win all of the games they would need to get the national championship? Maybe not, but I think they could get there. But I think those 6 that I mentioned are certainly all teams that you could say have a legit shot, have the talent, have shown at times this season play that if they get hot and get on a run, they can all win one.
All right, Rebecca, I want the truth on this. The truth, okay?
Okay.
So UConn is the only team to win men and women's title in the same year. They did it in 04 and 14. There are 3 schools that have top 4 in seeding: Maryland, Kentucky, and Duke. Duke is 1 in the men's and 2 in the women's. Would you want to see another team tie you guys and be men and women's champ, or do you want that solely for your school?
Of course, I don't want to see anyone else do it. I mean, come on now.
Nice.
No, I think, and what UConn's done it twice, right? 04 and 14, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Last year, the women screwed up the 4 thing. It was supposed to be 4, 14, 24. The men did it. But yeah, no one else should do that.
There we go. There you go.
Planting the flag firmly in Storrs, Connecticut. Rebecca Lobo, you guys can check her out all over the ESPN airwaves during this tournament. It was great on selection last night. Her, Holly, and the rest of the gang doing a phenomenal job ushering in a bracket that is certainly going to continue to showcase and produce even more of the star power that's dominated women's college basketball for a while now. Rebecca, thank you so much for the time on what I'm sure is a busy morning, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the tournament run.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rebecca. I love
feel
that.
A lot better,
I love
Dad,
that.
about being one of the 6 teams that. Well, oh, you love the petty. You love the petty from Rebecca.
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't want somebody. I would congratulate them if they did it, but I wouldn't want it to happen. But I would say congrats. But that doesn't mean I want it to happen.
Well, I don't know anyone who would want it to happen. Like, that's my thing, is I don't think anyone would sign up for that.
I don't think people say it out loud, though. They're like, oh, I'll be happy for them. No, you won't.
Our thanks to Rebecca Lobo for joining us to preview the women's bracket, making me feel better about Notre Dame on the 3 line and their chances for making a deep run in this tournament. I got my pocket point guards ready over here to go. We have a coalition of the willing behind Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles. We've got the players going their 3-hole aggregate playoff right now. JJ Spawn and Rory McIlroy both teeing off here right now, finishing up the first hole. They're still locked at even, so we'll keep you posted and updated on that as we go along through the rest of the tournament here. But Dad, speaking of tournaments, I know everyone right now might be filling out the early brackets on the men's or the women's side at this point. And I thought this was interesting as people begin that process. I saw on CBS Sports when I was watching their reveal show the other day, we always talk about the matchups that produce the most upsets historically through the tournament. And for a long time, the 12-5 has always been the one that people circle as the sexy upset of choice throughout the tournament field. But CBS pointed out since 2018, that's actually shifted a bit now to the 11 seed. The 6-11s matchup has actually been the one over the last number of years that's produced that. Since 2018, 1 versus 16 is 22-2. Obviously, that's even a notable departure from the norm. 2 versus 15, 21-3. 3 versus 14 is 22-2. So usually you want to advance 1 through 3. That's pretty much chalk. 4 versus 13 is 17-7. 5 versus 12 has actually been 16-8 in favor of the 5 seed since 2018. But 6 versus 11 has been a dead even 12-12 on both sides there. So that really the one. 7 versus 10, 14-9, and 8 versus 9 actually 8-16 in favor of the 9 seed. So, Dad, if you're going historically since 2018 in recent memory, the 11 over the 6 and the 8 over the 9 would be the upsets that you're looking for there. So there's a little early fodder for your brackets. One of the many sheets of integrity you fill out, Dad.
And two of the 11 seeds are off the play-in, Texas and Xavier and San Diego State and North Carolina. The winner of those games is the 11 seed going against the San Diego State. UNC goes against Ole Miss, and Texas Xavier goes against Illinois. The other 11 seeds, when we had Joe Lunardi on, the bracketologist from ESPN, what two teams did he give us that could make a run? VCU and Drake, both are 11 seeds. Both fit into that category. VCU plays BYU, who has certainly been playing well. And Drake, where is it? Drake plays Missouri. So that just fits right into the narrative of 11-6 with the two teams. And you can damn well bet that on one sheet I will have both Drake and VCU moving on. On another sheet, I'll have neither Drake or VCU moving on. On another sheet, I'll have VCU moving on and Drake losing. And on another sheet, I'll have Drake moving on and VCU losing. So I'm going to cover my bases. And before anybody says, well, you can't claim, hey, I really picked that one, or I know what I'm talking about. And you know what? You're right. I don't care about having the knowledge to pick a winning bracket. I just care about winning the cash. That's what I care about. So I'm not going to brag that I called this or I called that, because I have all different scenarios in there. So I will not boast that I picked and I knew what I was talking about. Hell, people who don't even watch college basketball are going to win pools and not know what they're talking about. They're going to pick my favorite color or favorite mascot, and they're going to win, or they're going to place in a pool and win money through no skill of breaking down the team. So I'm not going on skill or breaking down the teams, even though I'd like to think I would, because I'm filling out multiple sheets. I get it. I can't claim to knowledge victory, but if I'm counting the cash, that's all that matters.
To be clear, my dad has never been in this to be a ball knower for March Madness. He is in this to win money and take it out of your pockets. If you do want some knowledge about some of the teams, Dad, that could comprise that Cinderella role, and you mentioned two of the best ones there, VCU falls into, I think, a few categories, Dad, when you look at the potential Cinderellas, the potential upsets. Obviously, what we've hit on here, double-digit seed is a must, but they fall into a few categories, and I think I've got a few of them nailed down here. One is small school with a star player or old guard that could potentially pop up in the tournament. And I think that's where Drake sort of falls into, really in a couple of categories here. But Drake has their guard, Bennett Starts, who followed Ben McCollum from D2 Northwestern Missouri State to this, Bennett Sturts followed McCollum from D2 Northwest Missouri State and has been averaging just under 20 points, 4-6 on the season, shooting 49% from the field and 35% from three. He is the exact brand of kind of, country-looking white guy that can become a fun totem during the tournament run here. And oh, by the way, their coach, Ben McCollum, won 30 games this season coming over from Division II. And so I think you've got that potential there. I would throw Colorado State in there as well. Nick Clifford, big wing that's averaging a lot of points, shooting 39% from three. And then High Point, Keswick Giffa, their point guard, averaging just under 15 points a game. They come into the tournament with a 14-game winning streak. That leads the nation right now. The other kind of team, Dad, that I look at are the teams that have coaching names that you recognize here. And those I would look at New Mexico, who's got Richard Pitino, the son of Rick Pitino, who was the Mountain West Coach of the Year. VCU's got Ryan Odom, who is the head coach at UMBC for the upset against Virginia. So tournament upset experience there, a guy who's taken multiple teams as well, too, is this third Division I program that he's taken to the NCAA tournament. McNeese has Will Wade, the former LSU coach. How about things that have aged differently than expected, Dad? The former LSU coach who was fired there after being a part of the wiretap and the alleged big-ass offer or whatever it was that he got caught on a wire talking about with a recruit as they were playing payers and got fired there. Will Wade now takes them back to the tournament as well. at McNeese, who's got another story that we can work with there. And then Arkansas with John Calipari, obviously injury playing a little bit more of a role there than we might think could make for a successful tournament run. But those are all kind of the ones there. And then, of course, McNeese has the rapping manager that went viral for a while back. Amir Khan, who rapped In and Out by Ludfo before a game. He leads them out with the boombox before every game. He's a guy that has that Sister Jean potential, Dad, to become the very funny human mascot for a team that makes a run. So those are all kind of the categories of Cinderellas that I look at and feel like could be the teams that have star players that make that turn, have the veteran coach, or have that extra it factor like Khan that could be one that propels you to tournament greatness here in March.
By the way, Amir Khan has signed 3 NIL deals, all with global brands. I mean, that's pretty impressive when your mascot is going around throwing around the NIL deals. And that's some things people pick on. You know, the mascots, and this guy has a story, so it may be one of the favorites. That's pretty interesting. But and those are higher seeds, like you said. Rick Pitino and St. John's sitting at a 2 seed in the same region as if they win through and Florida wins through, they would match up with Florida. Rick Pitino just got it going on with St. John's, right? Been there just 2 years. Last year was 20-13. So he in 30-4 this year, winning their conference, winning the Big East. He is no stranger, obviously, to the tournament through a number of different teams. So that's a story right there.
Yeah, Rick Pitino occupies a fascinating place in college basketball. You mentioned the tournament prowess, 6 different teams with St. John's now the latest. He has taken Boston University, Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, Iona, and now St. John's all to the tournament. St. John's won the Big East for the first time, I believe, since 1997 this year. And Dad, while he's a coach where the off-field or the off-court promiscuity, the vacated championship at Louisville and him being excused there for, allegations of the things that he allowed to go on inside that program when it came to recruiting and escorts and things like that. It's certainly a lot of his own doing in terms of why he's got the resume the way that he does. But, Dad, it's also an inarguable basketball resume in terms of on the court. If we separate the art from the artist for a moment and look at these teams, I heard Charlie Kravitz over at the Dominique Foxworth show point this out this morning. This team this year is kind of in the mold of those Luke Hancock-led Louisville teams and the ones in the early, I guess, aughts, the 2010s, that's what we call them. But incredible defensive teams that don't shoot very well but can get hot during the tournament. This is a guy that coaches his ass off at these spots here and finds a way to get these teams that maybe aren't the most talented and certainly aren't the most offensively effusive, but go out there and press and stress you and do all these things. And to be able to replicate it at this many different spots, Dad, it's sort of akin to the conversation we have about like an Andy Reid versus a Belichick in the NFL, where how much is that worth to you, Dad? Hey, Mike Krzyzewski does it for 1,000,000 years at the same place at the highest level. Tom Izzo's in the middle of doing that right now at Michigan State and bringing them back to the tournament. Or seeing a guy like Rick Pitino who's able to translate this success to so many different programs, regardless of how he got there.
And by the way, doing it in a new era of the portal and NIL as well, right? I mean, that's a whole new era. This guy, you talk about when he took Boston to the NCAAs. That was in 70, or that was NIT. He took him in 82. I mean, dude's been coaching forever and now is in the most different time of coaching with the portal and NIL. And what he's doing is really amazing. But you're right overall. When we were talking earlier about the tournament, a lot of times, when you have great like Duke has 3 freshmen, including the best player in the country in Cooper Flagg. That always does, that's always does not guarantee the title. By having the 3 great freshmen or multiple great freshmen, it is kind of an experienced backcourt because you got to win 6 games. And you're looking for some steady experience in the backcourt to help you. Now, that doesn't mean Duke can't go out and win it with 3 freshmen, including the best player in the country. But 6 games is a lot. And normally you are looking for a little bit of experience.
No, I'm completely with you. We always talk about sports are almost always more Jimmies and Joes than anything else. But for this tournament in particular, it does reward age more often than not, especially when it comes to your guards. I mean, it's the most oft-repeated meme that's true around March Madness is old guards, one of the first places to look. It's like finding teams with good offensive lines in college football or the NFL. And so you're right. For that reason, and with experience coaching, Dad, with a guy like Rick Pitino who has been there over and over again and understands what this tournament demands, it is interesting to see him be able to fit this to every program that he's gone to, all of them in different tax brackets and different places in the sport. Now, he sort of bristles, and this is the funny part to me, and where he shows his old guard, because Dad, at a time where most of his peers, he's 72 years old, most of his peers are retiring. Most of his peers are leaving the sport behind and saying, I don't want to deal with the rest of this stuff. I don't want to have to go out and do it this way. St. John's reportedly has the highest NIL payroll in the Big East. There's been a bunch of stories written lately about a booster, a prominent billionaire booster that's helped fund the program. But Rick Pitino did come out and made sure to tell people, hey, our best players are underpaid. They're guys that weren't playing at other schools that we've been able to coach up and get going in the right way. And he does still represent something that I've seen plenty of, Dad, which is a lot of coaches, especially older ones, where your ability to recruit and develop and do the things that Rick Pitino has done were the hallmark that you use to define what made you a good coach. And so this idea that money plays any role in players coming there, they always seem to push back on for those ego reasons that don't make sense. I would love to be the best team in the Big East that's able to say, yeah, we're going to get you paid and we'll go out there and win all these games. You still have to go and put the ingredients to work, no matter how you go acquiring them, whether it's at a farmer's market or whether it's at Walmart. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's why we talked about the college game is known more for the coaches, the Tom Izzos of the world, than the players, usually the one-and-done great players. I'd be interested to know the top-paid player at St. John's compared to the other top players around the country, because you're right. He said they're not top paid guys. They're guys that weren't playing somewhere else, which really puts a feather in the cap to the coaching that's going on, right? And to see what kind of a run they could make, that really lets you know that it is about coaching still in college.
Yeah, well, at the very least, Rick Pitino has been able to demonstrate that. He's one of the few people, and we talk about this all the time, so much of college is getting entrenched in recruiting to your identity, having a booster base that you can count on, all these things that a lot of times take time to build up in programs. And much like we talked about with Jim Harbaugh, who always seemed able to come in and shock programs back to life and produce immediate results, Rick Pitino, say what you want about him personally or what he has been attached to, but once you have gotten him on the court and in the building, the results are impossible to deny. And now he's taken that model to St. John's and revived that program, made the Big East feel very big again this year, and now has a chance to do the same thing as they try and make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. We'll be back for more in hour number 2 here on Gojo. Oh, heartbreak at the players right now if you were rooting for the underdog story, as Rory McIlroy and JJ Spaun, a name that has had a successful start to this tour season, but overall ranked in the mid-50s, one tour win to his name. Dad, the 3-hole aggregate playoff at the players going on today, 16, 17, and 18. They get up to 17, which if you didn't watch over the weekend and see it, is the hole that's like an island style green surrounded by a ton of water. You saw guys putting it in the drink left and right, and Spaun puts it in the drink and ends up going triple bogey on 17. Oh. Rory now even on the day. Spaun +3, and it looks like, Dad, we're not going to have to ask or answer any more of those questions about is it considered choking if Rory gives it away today. On the other side, I don't know if you can call it. I mean, technically it is with Spaun. He went into the final day, I believe, as the leader. Sure. and got it to this point. But, man, you feel for the guy, Dad. Once he left that putt short on 18 yesterday, the look in his eyes looked like a guy who knew what he was up against and now is feeling all of that pressure here this morning.
So true. That ball was tracking yesterday on 18. It just wasn't enough power behind it and fell just a couple inches short. That would have been it. He would have won. So yeah, he is no pressure anymore, right? When you go triple bogey on 17, Rory's just got to stay dry, and he's going to win the thing and get his 4.7 million or whatever it is. But wow, and listen, there were a lot of balls hitting the water on 17. By players you don't know and players you do know. So it just happened to be when all eyes are on him when you're in a playoff. That's just obviously there's no good time to do it, but that was a really, really bad time to do it.
Yeah, no, an incredible, brutal moment there for Spaun. So again, for the Players Championship, could be a big trophy and a big payday for Rory McIlroy coming up as they get set to tee off on 18. Speaking of teeing off, though, Dad, this weekend, lots of good action in the NBA, and this interesting rant from Pistons head coach JB Bickerstaff, who the Pistons have been an awesome story this year. Look, playoff team right now, have been sensational, went on a nice win streak earlier in the year. And JB Bickerstaff and company lost to Oklahoma City, which there's no dishonor in that. Oklahoma City is the best team in basketball. But they lost Saturday 113-107 to Oklahoma City in a game that included five technicals in the third quarter, including 2 and 48 seconds that ended with Detroit star Cade Cunningham getting ejected from the game. And this was JB Bickerstaff sounding off on the officiating and maybe speaking for a lot of people around the league that have had to go up against Oklahoma City this year. Take a listen.
Right? We understand that we play a style of ball that's physical, it's on the edge. Right? I coach my ass off with a passionate way. I'm into the games. Our players are into the games. We understand that, right? But we deserve a level of respect because we're competing our tails off and bringing something positive to this league, right? We're growing young players. Our young players are competing their tail off. The least that they could do is get the same respect that everybody else in this league gets and get refereed the same way that everybody else in this league gets reffed. And enough is enough of it. And what you saw tonight was disgusting. It was a disgusting display of disrespect towards our guys and what we're trying to do.
Wow. Not mincing words at all there, Dad. I love this in general. Like, Detroit's been an awesome story this year. They're the 6th seed right now, pretty firmly in the Eastern Conference playoff field. And they are a young team and one that was awful, we know, for the last number of seasons. And now, Dad, is back to relevance this year. But you talk about it all the time. The Stars generally tend to get whistles. And on the other side in Oklahoma City, you've got a player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that's kind of at the center of this conversation around officiating league-wide in terms of the whistle that he gets as the likely MVP of this league. I love it from JB Bickerstaff's perspective because you take this opportunity to reinforce to your team that you're behind them. You show them that you're going to go out and have their back publicly. All these things that make an infinite amount of sense from a leadership and team building standpoint. But Dad, where are you at on this overall for the way that the league and so many fans seem to view SGA and the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's not James Harden-esque the way he draws fouls, right? where James Harden is become kind of masterful at it. SGA was 10 of 10 from the free throw line. They had 22 free throws to Detroit's 13. like I said, stars get calls. It's the way it is. I mean, it's nothing new. Should it happen? Probably not. Does it happen? It does. It happens in all sports. And I dig the coach sticking up for his team. You mentioned at the end of the third, there were 3 actually technicals at the end with 48 seconds left in the third, 2 on Cade Cunningham. It went from 11-point deficit to a 15-point deficit going to the fourth. They ended up winning the fourth quarter and losing by 6, so SGA puts in 48. It's a coach sticking up for his team. May get fined for it, but I'm sure he doesn't care. But they're the best team in basketball right now with the presumptive MVP of the league. I like I said, is it right? No. But does it happen? Yes. They get calls.
I tend to agree. I also, again, SGA's style of play, he is a guy that attacks the basket. He's a guy that gets into the mid-range and gets into people's bodies. I push back a little bit on the idea that he is some sort of free throw merchant, but I understand that is a massive complaint for so many people. And JB Bickerstaff kind of gave voice to that in a way that, to me, again, where the Pistons are and what their trajectory has been, I love this show from a head coach going out publicly, having his star player, his team's back as they go through a season that's been a really great revival for all of them, Dad.
By the way, Oklahoma City is going to get fined for player participation policy going back to a game March 7th. They sat their entire starting 5, including SGA, who missed, I think, a game for just the second time. But they sat their entire starting 5. The Jazz were fined $100,000 earlier this week for sitting Lauri Markkanen for multiple games. The NBA is looking at the 76ers as well. The NBA trying to crack down on having stars play, but there are times when teams will take the fine. You know, they'll take the $100,000 fine if they can rest their players. And Oklahoma City, though, may have bitten off more they can chew with sitting the entire starting 5.
And Oklahoma City won't care about that. Their goal is a championship this year. They know the postseason is the thing that they've got to get over right now. They've maxed out the regular season success. And so they're one of the teams that makes sense for that. Dad, that's at least better than being the Suns and trotting out your actual star players and still going and losing games rampantly left and right in a way that seems like they're primed for an epic teardown. The Lakers snapped their 4-game losing streak without LeBron James against them. And so they get off the schneid. Huge game for Luka Doncic. But that, to me, it's good for the Lakers because post LeBron, it had looked pretty rough for them. But overall, winning against the Suns this late in 2025 doesn't really mean much to me, considering that team has been listless for a while and is going to give way to really an offseason where the storyline is just going to be, where does Kevin Durant get traded to? Because there's no chance he's playing basketball for the Suns in 2026.
No chance. I mean, this team is just on the outside of the play-in, a game and a half behind the Mavericks, who basically have everybody hurt. The Mavericks have lost 3 in a row. Phoenix is 4-6 in their last 10. You're right. I mean, a team trying to build around some superstars, it just hasn't happened. And this has now happened a couple of times with Kevin Durant building around superstars, and it just not only not happening, but not even being close, not even being in the conversation of competitive in the conference. So you're right. That team's going to have to blow up.
This is especially important. LeBron James missed his 4th straight game, but JJ Redick said is ramping up towards a comeback, so they can go and time that out as they sit at the 5 seed. But this is important, Dad, for very petty reasons, because by Phoenix losing this game, they failed the chance to make ground on the Dallas Mavericks for the Western Conference final play-in spot as the Mavericks lost to the Philadelphia 76ers. Phoenix 1.5 games behind Dallas in that right now. We need the Mavericks in the play-in, and we need them to somehow pull this off. We need to figure out whatever machinations we need to get a Mavericks-Lakers series in the NBA playoffs. Yeah. And the only way that can happen is if they get in the play-in to begin right now. So no one wants to see the Suns in there. They've been dreadful to watch all season long. Keep them out. Keep the Dallas Mavericks in. And give us the hope that somehow we could see Luka Doncic with the opportunity to rub their nose in it on one of the biggest stages possible, because it seems like things are going to time up pretty well for the Lakers. We're going to time up a finish here on Gojo and Golic. This, that, and third next. All right, let's wrap up the show the way we always do. It's this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. Download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. And watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Subscribe and hit the bell so you're ready to go when we log on here in the morning. Thank you to our guest, Rebecca Lobo, the Hall of Famer and ESPN basketball analyst, for stopping by to help us recap the Selection Sunday of Women's March Madness. You miss any of that interview, go check it out wherever you get our podcast or available here on YouTube as soon as we are done with the show. Dad, let's start off this, that, and the third. More paydays in the NFL. Money coming out, and this time, as always, like good teams do, re-signing your own tends to be good business. Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase were the story last night. Cornerback Derek Stingley Jr., the story this morning. He re-signs with the Houston Texans for a 3-year, $90 million extension that includes $89 million guaranteed. Now, even within that, the structure matters, but that $30 million a year base value makes Derek Stingley Jr., Dad, the highest paid defensive back in NFL history. And this surpasses J.C. Horn, who recently just signed that 4-year, $100 million extension with the Panthers. But no surprise here, Dan, I just looked it up. Derek Stingley Jr. doesn't turn 24 until June this year. Insanely young player with some incredible ball skills. And so this one, money well spent and well earned by him.
And there was some concerns. He was the number 3 overall pick in 22. He missed 8 games his rookie year and 6 games his second year. So there were some concerns about health staying on the field, but he played in all 17 games this last year, was first, made the All-Pro team, Pro Bowl team. So he really kind of lived up to the expectations of that pick, by first being available and on the field and then playing great. And he, again, by $5 million took over the top defensive back spot from J.C. Horn, from $25 million to $30 million. So the prices just keep going up, right? It's wide receiver, edge rusher, and cornerback. Are after quarterback are the highest position players, because you have a wide receiver at 40, an edge rusher at 40, and now a cornerback at 30. So the money is going up because the cap's going up.
Yes, and I think that's worthwhile, and continuing to remind people the NFL salary cap's gone up, over $50 million in the last couple of years. And
2
so
years.
In the last 2 years. So Derek Stingley Jr. getting him signed, as we've seen under D'Amico Ryans and that defense, the pass rush and coverage have worked in tandem really well when you've got the guys led by Will Anderson Jr. up front to go along with Derek Stingley Jr., who, when healthy and on the field, Young, incredibly productive at the right time this season, and now incredibly well paid because of it. 3 years, $90 million with 89 guaranteed, as he now is locked down to lockdown for the foreseeable future in the Houston Texans. Dad, let's get to that. Formula One back in the mix this last weekend. Here, the Australian Grand Prix kicks off the 2025 season, where there are plenty of headlines. We know Lewis Hamilton going to be racing with Ferrari for the first time off, but it was Lando Norris, that holds off Max Verstappen and picks up his 5th career Grand Prix win, putting himself atop the driver standings right now, Dad. Big time move for the McLaren driver.
Yeah, absolutely is, and obviously the first race, so he's in the lead for the championship. This is the first time Max Verstappen hasn't been in the lead for the driver championship since May of 22. We know Lewis Hamilton dominated for a long time, and then Max Verstappen has dominated. Max took second in this game. Norris got his first win last year in Miami, ended up winning 4 times, I think, on the circuit last year. I think beating Verstappen each time, pretty much by a long shot last year each time. But yeah, starts off the new year with a win. So a new leader, 1 race in for the Drivers' Championship, obviously with a long way to go.
It is, but Dad, I think down the back half of last season and now having this be the opening stanza for Formula One this year, good overall, especially for the appetites of American racing fans who I think over the last couple of years, right, we had seen the dominance of Red Bull, the way that Max Verstappen had really run circles around the field. And so now it feels like things have sort of leveled out again, the tweaks to the cars that have made it a little bit more of a competitive field. I think good overall and exciting again for all the things that you have, the big treetop headlines going into this season. I think seeing the ball go through the basket for someone other than Verstappen to start off this year is a good reminder that things are different now, and that should be really, really interesting across the board. So we'll be fun to get back into that. I'm sure we'll get our buddy Jessica Smetana on here to talk plenty about that as we can set the table for this upcoming season. But going out in Australia and getting the win there is Max Verstappen. Just a little bonus, by the way, here. In this, that, and the third. We will get to the third momentarily here. But, Dad, we did wrap up the players. Rory McIlroy does get the win after the 3-hole playoff this morning as well. So, Lando Norris a winner over the weekend and qualifying again because we had extended action due to a rain delay yesterday. Rory McIlroy also a winner over the weekend at the Players' Championship. So, big way for him, Dad, at the beginning of this 2025 season. As we know, TGL's been going on here. We got the Tiger Woods injury news, so the golf world was reeling. And Rory McIlroy, who's always kind of been that guy that was the face of the PGA versus LIV for a while and has struggled in some of the big stages here, gets to also see the ball go through the basket in a big way here and win a very clutch playoff. Yeah,
as we get closer and closer to the Masters in the beginning of April. Always look forward to that.
Yes. So got to go and be at your best when your best is required there for a Masters that, I know what he says, but will not have Tiger Woods. There's no way at this point in time. And so that in doubt. And we move forward here to the third, Dad. And speaking of someone defying age, Bill Belichick defying age and helping his girlfriend, Jordan, defy gravity. Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick photographed having a little fun and sun over the weekend, Dad, in a way that took the internet by storm. We've seen all of these like weird aerial yoga poses that plenty of influencers do all over the internet. Did not imagine seeing Bill Belichick, the septuagenarian head coach and now the North Carolina Tar Heels, enjoying this out on the beach. And Dad, it just continues this new young version of Bill Belichick that we've seen pop up with his 20-something-year-old girlfriend here. I'm happy to see Bill happy, however that happens to come here. I know people have different feelings on the age gap between the two, but man, getting to see arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history go out and, like, we talk all the time, Dad, in college about how weird it is to see coaches like Nick Saban dabbing with recruits and doing whatever they have to do to go and secure the commitment of these 18-year-old superstar athletes. But to see Bill Belichick do this kind of stuff to entertain the woman that he is currently dating is an even more hilarious version of that for me.
You know what? We shouldn't be surprised anymore, right? We just shouldn't. He's showing up all over social media because of his girlfriend, obviously posting, and he seems to be accepting of it, understanding that this is kind of the new way. But it seems odd seeing the gruff Bill Belichick on the sideline, the gruff Bill Belichick doing a post-game or really any presser during the week of we're on to Cincinnati, and then to see him smiling all the time on social media all the time, doing this. I mean, this is something kids do. And while his girlfriend is, no, she's not a kid, she's obviously an adult. It seems odd. But as people say, they're kind of, have a problem with a 70-something date and a 20-something. Listen, who the hell? I'm sure they're like, who the hell? What cares what everybody else thinks? Bill's enjoying himself. He seems to be enjoying himself. I don't think she's dragging him down that road and saying you need to do this. He seems to be enjoying it. So hell, if they're happy, so be it. Let them be happy.
We talk about it all the time. The biggest question always is, what the hell do they have to talk about? Clearly, Bill is making an effort to do and talk about the things that she wants to do. Like if his public actions of him being on social media more, doing stuff like this are any indication, maybe he is having a brat summer. Maybe Bill Belichick really has leaned into all the things that young people are doing. The thing that ticked me off about this, though, wasn't anything to do with Bill Belichick. I sent this picture of Bill Belichick and his girlfriend to our family group chat, and my mom's first response was, "Is that you?" Like, Bill Belichick, don't get me wrong, I'm impressed by the leg striation here, but I can't believe that a laid-down flatback Bill Belichick is somehow a comp to me from my own mother. So that was a little stunning to me.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. You compared to a 70-something. That's not good.
Not a great look for me. Great look for y'all is to download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.